Okay, we're rolling. All right. Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your King, King Clifford Jefferson, the Senator of God, the fifth Caravan Jew, the son of folk, the ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of the King of Peace. We know the King of Peace. We call King Edgar the Peaceful because he truly, indeed, was a peaceful king. All right. Alongside me, as always, I have my Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, who's head of the organization of the Moorish, parts of the Third Temple English Church of England. But this lesson is for the Moorish Americans who are a temple. Your temple is not being ran right as a result of you not understanding chapter 29 of the Holy Quran, Circle 7. So this is what we'll be discussing today. Hopefully this enlightenment will bring you back home to the understanding where you need to be in regards to that flight that Noble Charlie said that one day you will be taking. All right, so with that, I'll digress and I'll let Archbishop make this introductory, and we're going to have a beautiful lesson today. Peace.
Peace and love, brothers and sisters within the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion. Is I, Archbishop Belmont, from the illustrious Noble House of Belmont. And today is March 23rd, 2024 of the Gregorian calendar, which is equivalent to our 2974 Berber calendar. And like we say here at the Third Temple English Church of England, it is a great time to be alive. I'd like to give honors to our King, Clifford Jefferson, from the Royal House of Plantagenet, as well as our Queen, Lisa Jordan, from the Royal House of Godwinson, to the trustees and members within the Third Temple English Church of England, as well for those of you who have the ability and the privy to hear the message that the King has been able to bring together regarding this lesson. Once again, we come to bring clarity to the world who has been pretty much shrouded in darkness. It is the time for us to now bring the intelligence back and the literacy back to those who need to be able to now be able to stand in the day of light to prove who they are, going back genealogy as well back to the law that corroborates together, that has a stand for them to be able to exist on this earthly plane. And like the King says, we always come here to bring these messages to those who actually want to use it, and not for those who want to utilize it as just a spectacle, because we're not coming here to hurt anyone, but we come to bring awareness. So therefore, those of us who have been suffering for far too long because we have been the descendants of those prisoners of war based off of the wars going back to the time of our ancient predecessors. Now, this is heirs, we're ready to correct the record. And only way for us to correct the record, we must do it lawfully. And with that being said, I'll digress and leave the rest of the introduction to the King. And for those of you who are listening, please follow along and please pay attention accordingly. I digress. Peace.
Well said, Archbishop. Beautiful introductory as always. This is what we come to do here at the Third Temple English Church of England, is to enlighten you about the temple church, because the temple is a church. It's a place where the people gather. All right, we congregate. All right, but the purpose and intent for why we congregate is yet to be understood. All right, this is what you need to understand, because your body of politics exists within your temple, okay, or your temples, all right? This is what's missing from the Moorish times Temple of America. Your body of politics. Your body of politics is based off the social contract or the social compact that you as sovereign people surrender to your sovereign. Your sovereign does not exist because the sovereign is the king or the monarch, and according to the Holy Quran, Circle 7, you're supposed to have a king, all right? This was chapter 29 of the Holy Quran, Circle 7, as prescribed by your prophet. So Noble Jali was prophesying, all right, about magistrate and subject, and that master and servant should be subject to the magistrate, all right, which were the people you put in position to represent you in lieu of your sovereignty, and to make sure that the social order is maintained according to the sovereignty that you have, that you surrender to that one individual, all right? That one individual that sits on the throne, right? That sits on the throne and is enthroned with the majesty, with his majesty's crown, okay? This is in your own book. In your own book, you should have a king, queen. You should have a king. All right. Noble Jolly prophesied about that. He told you, do not throw away your English surname. Right. He also said, don't throw away your Bibles, for the Europeans going to have to pay back in compound interest for what they did to us in the time of slavery. All right. So the one who wrote your Bible or who illustrated your Bible was no other than King James. All right. King James was the founder of the House of Stuarts, who were Protestants who rebelled against the English church, who was under the control of Henry VIII, who rebelled against the English church as a result of the conflict that took place at the time, what we call the War of the Roses. The War of Roses was between the descendants of Edward I, who established Queen Imperatrice, which was an act of Parliament of England, not Scotland, not Ireland, to protect the estate or entail land or the land that was promised to the heirs who were given feudal tenures or estates and land from the lords who were subject to the monarch under what we call free and common soakage. All right. This has been the existing protocol from time immemorial up until this present day. Nobody recognize that. We're going to show you, but before we show you, we need to bring you up to speed. Okay? 2024 is it. The Messiah is back. It was prophesied. Okay? I'm going to show you. We talked about this in previous lectures, but I know you don't watch the lectures. So I always say, don't know, Archbishop, it's better you to not know this than to know this and not follow it.
Absolutely.
Okay? So you have a chance to know this, because those who came to know this and not following it, you will be held more strictly and held more accountable for those who do not know. So the Moorish Science Temple of America, you're supposed to know, because chapter 29 of the Moorish Science Temple of America of the Holy Quran, Circle 7, tells you about master and servant. And he tells you on the master and servant that being the servant is not a bad thing. Okay? A lot of you don't want to be servants. You want to be the master. You want to be the leader. You want to be the head. That's not how a government is supposed to be run. That's an aggregate. Too much power in the hands of too many people is a fool. All right? You don't know who to check if you got a bunch of people running around with power that they don't supposed to have, such as in the case of the Republic form of government that you got here. You got the legislative power who makes the law, executive who executes the law, and the judicial who upholds the law. But all the laws that were passed by the legislative branch are not being executed by the executive branch because they making laws them damn self. And then the judiciary is upholding that law and forgetting all about the laws that were passed by the legislature that goes back to the original parliamentary government that existed prior to the Confederate States that now are in place of the parliamentary procedures that existed prior to their existence, which was under what we call a commonwealth, which you call now a republic form of government. See how easy that sounds? And probably none of you have a clue about what I said. So let's teach them. All right, let's get there. Thank you, Queen. Okay, where do I want to go? I want to go here first. Let's go here first. Temple Church. Now we are called the Third Temple English Church. Can we see that, Archbishop?
Yes, I can see it, King.
All right, hold on for 1 second.
And point of interest, like the King said, we are called the Third Temple English Church of England. And we have the right to do so. Why? It's because we're the descendants of these people via genealogy. You are who you descend from, and no one can change that.
Okay. Yeah, like he said, we call it the Third Temple English Church. But before we go to the Third Temple Church, let's go to what we call Temple Church. All right? Temple Church. Because the Third Temple goes back to the time of Solomon. Okay? And they're talking about the rebuilding of the Third Temple. You had two already built. One's yet to be built. Okay? This is called the third temple. That's why we call the third temple English church, because we are the temple, third temple that was supposed to be resurrected, going all the way back to Jerusalem. We know Jerusalem was subject to the monarch of what we call Folk V, king of Jerusalem, father of Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew, the father of Henry II of the Plantagenet crown, where we descend down from. So there's a direct proximity of blood. Okay? There's a direct proximity of bloodline by way of descent, that surname.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we must understand that. So let's go to Temple Church first. Everybody see it, Temple Church. Let's just go up here first. Read that first paragraph, Archbishop.
It says, the Temple Church, a royal peculiar in the Church of England, is a church in the city of London, located between Fleet Street and the River Thames, built by the Knights Templar for their English headquarters in the Temple Precinct. It was consecrated on February 10th, 1185, by Patriarch Heraclius of Jerusalem. During the reign of King John, that's our predecessor, 1199 to 1216, it served as the royal treasury, supported by the role of the Knights Templar as proto-international bankers. It is now jointly owned by the Inner Temple and the Middle Temple, Inns of Court, basis of the English legal profession.
Okay. Very, very, very important that you understand that, because Clifford's Inn is where Inner Temple, Middle Temple, and the Inns of Court sit. All right, we talked about that. We know Clifford's Inn is where the lawyers sit in the upper room dining and breaking bread. Okay, that's the upper room. All right, this is the upper room we're talking about. All right, we know that in order for you to pass the bar, according to our understanding of legal profession of an esquire, all right, because that's a title of a knight. All right, esquire. It derives from the Inns of Court. All attorneys who pass the bar must pass the Inns of Court. And for you to do that, you must enter the Inner Temple or the Middle Temple. Most of your scholars, most of your historians, most of those, Edward Cope, Edward Blackstone, these people went through the Inner Temple and Middle Temple. Your scholars are going through colleges, all right? All right, they got degrees in what they call different type of degrees, but they are not on the level as the level that people are who go into these Inner Temples, the Middle Temples, and what we call the Inns of Court. All right, continue to read, Archbishop.
It says, it is famous for being a round church, a common design feature for Knights Templar churches, and for its 13th and 14th century stone effigies. It was heavily damaged by German bombing during World War II and has since been greatly restored and rebuilt.
Okay, let's go. Let's go around here to seizure. Start right there in January.
In January 1215, William Marshall served as negotiator during a meeting in the temple between King John and the barons, who demanded that the king should uphold rights enshrined in the coronation charter of his predecessor and elder brother, King Richard I. Marshall swore on behalf of the king that the grievances of the barons would be addressed in the summer, which led to the signing by the king of Magna Carta in June. Marshall later became regent during the reign of John's infant son, King Henry III, 1216-1272. Henry later expressed a desire to be buried in the church, and to accommodate this, in the early 13th century, the chancel of the original church pulled down and a new larger chancel was built, the basic form of which survives today. It was consecrated on Ascension Day, 1240, and comprises a central aisle and two side aisles, north and south, of identical width.
Stop. Let's go a little further right here. Crown seizure.
After the destruction and the abolishing of the Knights Templar in 1307, King Edward II took control of the church as a crown possession. It was later given to the Knights Hospitaller, who leased the temple to two colleges of lawyers. One college moved into the part of the temple previously used by the Knights, and the other into the part previously used by its clergy, and both shared the use of the church. The colleges evolved into the Inner Temple and the Middle Temple, two of the four London Inns of Court.
This next one.
In 1540, the church became the property of the crown. Once
Read
again,
that again. Read that again.
It says, in 1540, the church became the property of the crown. Once again, when King Henry VIII abolished the Knights Hospitaller in England and confiscated their property. Henry provided a priest for the church under the former title, Master of the Temple. In the 1580s, the church was the scene of the Battle of the Pulpits, a theological conflict between the Puritans and supporters of the Elizabethan Compromise. Shakespeare was familiar with the site and the church and the garden feature in his play Henry VI, Part 1, as the setting for the fictional scene of the plucking of the two roses of York and Lancaster and the start of the Wars of the Roses. In 2002, this event was commemorated with the planting of the new white and red roses in the modern gardens.
Oh, okay. All right. So there's your background for the Temple Church. All right. That goes back to the story going to the Knights of Templar, Knights of Hospitaller. That goes back to Jerusalem, blase, 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 blase. We talked about that in previous lectures. So if you don't know, you need to go back and watch that to be up to speed. Okay. All right. So we understand the Temple Church. Now let's go into the Third Temple, because our ancestors were the ones who built the Temple Church. All the castles that were built in Jerusalem were built by who? Folk the Fifth, ruler of Jerusalem, father of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk of Jerusalem. He ruled not just England and France, because England and France was one under this cell behind us. This cell. All right, let's move further. Third Temple. Read that part.
The Third Temple, or the third house of the Sanctum, refers to a hypothetical rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. It will succeed Solomon's temple and the Second Temple, the former having been destroyed during the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem in 580 BCE, and the latter having been destroyed during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 70 CE. The notion of and the desire for the Third Temple is sacred in Judaism, particularly in Orthodox Judaism. It would be the most sacred place of worship for Jews. The Hebrew Bible holds that the Jewish prophets called for its construction prior to or in tandem with the Messianic age. The building of the Third Temple also plays a major role in some interpretations of Christian eschatology.
Stop. Okay. So the Hebrew Bible holds that the Jewish prophets called for its construction prior to or in tandem with the Messianic age. Okay. Y'all, y'all better listen to your king. We're talking about the Masonic age and the building of the Third Temple. All right. Going back to the Temple Church. All right. The Temple Church. Very important. All right. So let's deal with the Masonic age, y'all. The age of Masonic age is the year 2024, which is the 6,000 year period from creation till now. Because we talk about the Masonic age, all right? Not from your biblical story, abstract, but from a concrete understanding. Because we always say, he who writes your time book, he who writes your book sets your timeline. Okay? Time never was what man was not. As a life of time, a man beginning, the time will come when man will be no more. And man has always been here. Is what type of man we talking about? All right? What type of man? So let's deal with, because we know that the so-called Messiah or the King of Peace or Jesus, who you call him, to us, this was King Edgar the Peaceful, because all the kings going back to time immemorial, time out of mind, and that can go back all the way back to 6,000 years ago from the creation. There has never been a king of peace. All right, other than that one prophesied in that Bible, and that happens to be Jesus Christ. All right, which ain't came yet, because we're talking about the Masonic age. Okay, the Masonic age of that one who will return as the Messiah will be the one who will establish the Third Temple Church. All right, because two already been built. Let's get there. $6,000 years. Read that for me, Bishop.
According to the classical Jewish sources, the Hebrew year 6000 marks the latest time for the initiation of the Messianic age. The Talmud, Midrash, and the Zohar state that the date by which the Messiah will appear is 6,000 years from creation. According to tradition, the Hebrew calendar started at the time of creation, placed at 3761 BCE.
Stop. Okay. Read that paragraph again.
It says, according to classical Jewish sources, the Hebrew year 6000 marks the latest time for the initiation of the Messianic age. The Talmud, Midrash, and the Zohar state that the date by which the Messiah will appear is 6,000 years from creation. According to tradition, the Hebrew calendar started at the time of creation, placed at 3761 BCE.
Okay, so we can all agree that God created his creation in 3761 BCE. Is that what they're saying, Archbishop?
Yep, before Common Era. Yep.
Okay, so that's dealing with the Gregorian calendar. Okay, we know that the Anglo-Saxons were converted to Christianity by way of the Gregorian mission led by Pope Gregory I, Augustine of Canterbury, under the authority of Pope Gregory I. All right. So if the creation story of creation was the year 3761 BCE, let's go to that calendar. Okay, let's go to the calendar because you need a calendar to support your story. 3761 BCE and to us is the Berber year 1 AD. 1 AD, Annos Dominios, the year of our Christ. Because BC means before Christ. AD means Annos Dominios in the year. That means he's there.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Look it up. Annos Dominios, in the year of our Lord. That's why when they was in the Middle Ages, they were called lords. How we know? Let's go to 1 AD. Because 1 AD to us is in the Hebrew year 3761 BCE, which means the beginning of your creation, your story. All right, we were already here when your story came into existence. Let's prove it. There you go, AD, 1 AD. All right, 1 AD, Anno Dominios. 1 AD. All right, so if it's 1 AD in the Gregorian year, as you can see here, the Hebrew year is what year for him, Archbishop?
3761.
So that means that God is just creating everything that you so-called deem factual in that Bible in 3761 AD. All right, because Jesus is the Lord. And God, Jesus and God is one and the same. All right, so if God created creation in 3761 in the Hebrew calendar, which is according to the 6,000 year time period, it's the beginning of creation, then how come we got a Berber calendar saying 951? That's our year.
Mm-hmm.
951. Okay, so in 951, King Edgar the Peaceful is ruling. We'll get to that in a second. So let's go back to 6,000 years. So it says, according to tradition, the Hebrew calendar started at the time of creation, placed at 3761 BCE, before Christian era. So before Christian era would be 1 BC. So you got BC, then you got AD, right? BC means before the Christian era. AD means the Christian era because the Lord is there under the Christian ideology. All right. So in the year 3761 BCE, and our year under the Berber year is actually 951. And our Lord is here. There ain't no spook. There's a real person here. And his name was King Edgar the Peaceful. Read the next paragraph.
It says the current 2023-2024 Hebrew year is 5784. By this calculation, the start of the 6,000th year would occur at nightfall of September 29th, 2239, and the end will occur at nightfall for September 16th, 2040 on the Gregorian calendar.
So they said the current year, 2023 or 2024, is the Hebrew year 5784. So that means that from 3761 to 5784 was the complete calculation of the 6,000 year period for the Messiah to return. That's what they're saying. The current year, 2023, 2024 Hebrew year is 5784. Let's make sure that's a fact. 2024. Gregorian year. Who created the Gregorian calendar, Archbishop?
Pope Gregory the 13th.
All right, all right. Greetings, Countess Searcheth. Okay. So in the Gregorian year is 2024. What is it in the Berber year?
2974.
That's our year, 2974. Your year is 2024. Our year is 2974. What year is it in the Hebrew calendar?
5784.
Let's go back to the 6,000 year return of the Messiah.
Said the current Hebrew year is 5784.
So what is that saying? The Messiah is supposed to return in this year, right?
No, it says the Messiah, according to theirs, will return at nightfall on September 29, 2039.
Okay, but that's according to the Gregorian year. That's a false year. That year don't exist. Ain't no Gregorian calendar. Because we're not going by that. It's just said here, the Hebrew year is 5784. Placed at, it says, according to tradition, the Hebrew calendar started at the time of creation, placed at 3764 BCE. The current year is 2024. Hebrew year is 5784, which is 2024. All right, so by this calculation, the start of the 6,000 year would occur at nightfall. Ain't no 2023 39 yet here. Yeah. But we're in the year 2024. And I'm claiming to be the Messiah. We established the Third Temple English Church is in the year, it still exists here in the year 2024. We incorporated in the year 2020. So we're fulfilling this prophecy as according to that as prescribed by the Hebrew calendar for the 6,000 year period. Because this is 6,000 year period from the creation to 2024. Because let's look up 2024. Let's look this up. The current hold on, where's that? I didn't mean to do that. Bear with me. Where is 6,000 years? One second, I didn't break something. 6,000. Bear with me. So they played with the calendar.
Exactly. And according to scripture, it said nobody would know the time when the Messiah is going to return. So if that's the case, how would they put a number to it?
Yeah, how would they put a number to it? Let me just say what I'm talking about. 2024. 6,000 years. All right, let's go back here. Okay, it says, according to tradition, the Hebrew calendar started at the time of creation, placed at 3761 BCE. The calendar year 2024 and 2023 and 2024 Hebrew year is 5784. By this calculation, the start of the 6,000 year would occur at 9/4/29 of 29 September 2039, and the end would occur at nightfall of the 16th September 2240 on the Gregorian year. That ain't even got here yet. So how can you predict the future? They don't know that. They got you looking for something under the Gregorian calendar, and the Gregorian calendar was a calendar imposed upon the English by way of the conversion going back to 597. We were converted to use the Gregorian calendar. That's a Roman calendar. We're not Roman. We're Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Let me prove it. Let's go to one more thing before we move on. Let's go to the year 1066. Here we go. We can see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. The year 1066. This is the Norman invasion by William the Conqueror. Look at the date.
And point of interest, you notice, according to this, they said Halley's Comet was taking place during this time and is recorded on the Bayeux Tapestry. And the Bayeux Tapestry is reflecting the Battle of Hastings that took place when William the Conqueror invaded. Now, what's taking place now, which this the eclipse, we're also going to be having what they call the Devil's Comet.
Everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. 1066. You see an English regnal year. William the First. That's William the Conqueror. 1066. That's when England was invaded. William the Conqueror was of Frankish descent, but he still followed the laws of the kings of Wessex or those of English or Angles descent. He was a bastard child. His son was Henry I. He married into the kings of Wessex and the kings of France by way of marriage. Okay, we talked about that in other classes. I ain't gonna have time to go through it today, but we continue to move on. So the English regnal year in 1066, at the time of the Norman invasion, is English regnal year. All right, let's go to 1059. 1050, what is it? A year before that, 1065. See if they have an English regnal year there. Do we see English regnal year, y'all?
Sure don't.
Where's the English regnal year at? You see a Berber year. So that means that those people living in that time era were actually Berbers before they sprung on the English aspect of it. So you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, if you want to play that game. So that's why we identify ourselves with Anglo-Saxon Berbers, because the first temple was built by who? Solomon.
By Solomon.
Okay, and we know Solomon was supposed to be the son of King David. That temple was sacked by who? Shushan. And XXIX was a Berber, going all the way back to the ancient Libyans, who were Berbers. Anglo-Saxon Berbers. We were everywhere. All right. So we see that in 1065, there was no English Regnal year. The only Regnals that were ruling at that time were Berber kings. Okay. Were Berber kings. So now we got that out the way. We already know that we're in the Messiah age because we're dealing with the building of the third temple from the temple church, which is the royal Fakir. Now let's show how I know this, because as we all know, I was a member of the Moorish Science of America, Temple number 10 on the Grand Sheik Road in Tel Bay, where I was the assistant Grand Sheik. And as an assistant Grand Sheik, I was forced to ask these questions that I'm bringing to you right now. And my Grand Sheik could not answer these questions. He couldn't answer them. We had a public meeting with the people of the Moorish Science of America, and I was dialoguing with my Grand Sheik in regards to me being in that position as the assistant Grand Sheik, knowing what I'm discovering contrast to what you're teaching here in the Moorish Science of America. And I said, if you want me to continue to follow this, then you're going to have to answer some of these questions with concrete proof and not that abstract talk you're talking about, because that's belief. There's 3 steps to the process: belief, faith, and fruition. That's what y'all teach. Y'all all still stuck in the belief state, because there is no faith, because you don't have nothing to put faith in. Something has to exist to put some faith in. That body of politics, because your faith is in your sovereignty, your ability to be able to be free. And that depends upon the body of politics, which keeps the social order that you can maintain your freedom. You ain't got freedom right now. Y'all just a bunch of people congregating together talking about freedom, but not exemplifying what freedom is, because freedom is a position of what we call participating in that freedom. Okay, what are you doing to free your people? And the only way you can free your people is free the land. So you can't even utter the word freedom, because the first instance of freedom is freedom on the land.
Freedom of the land.
If you ain't got freedom of the land, I don't give a damn what you call it. There is no freedom, because the land must be controlled by somebody. All right, let's not overlook these facts, y'all. So let's get to it. So in 1 AD, which is the year of our Lord, it was the beginning of your creation story, but our story was already in existence. All right, 951. 951, which is the Berber calendar, because we know the Berber calendar existed from time immemorial till 1066. That's when they switched to the English calendar, or the English Regnal year, under William the Conqueror. Must understand these facts. All right. So in 951, King Edgar the people was ruling. The King of Peace were ruling, which I am the reincarnation of the King of Peace, because the word God-free means God-free, peaceful territory. You can look my name up. Jefferson means peaceful territory. All right, let's get there. So King Edgar, we're saying, ruled in 951. He was born in 943, but was ruling. He came to rule in 959. Okay, but just look at this king real quick. We're talking about him all the time. King Edgar, King of the English. All right, King Edgar. He was called King Edgar the Peaceable. All right, so let's not get a Wikipedia, because that's what you always say. Oh man, that's what Wikipedia say. Blah 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 blah. Let's go to somebody who really did his studentry on this individual, who we call King Edgar the Peaceful, which is our King of Peace, which you call Jesus Christ. Let's see, because let's see how we know. Oh yeah, I know what I meant to show you. King Edgar the People was ruling in 951. I mean, he's existed in 951. But guess who's also born in the year 1 AD, which in the year Berber year is 951? Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It says it right there. Jesus is born in what under the Gregorian year 1 AD, but in our year it's 951. Your Jesus is yet to show up on the scene. Our Jesus has shown up on the scene.
On the scene. Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? He's on the scene already in 951, and he ain't even born yet.
Mm-hmm.
This Jesus ain't even been born. He said to be born, but no one can prove it. No one has seen him.
Exactly.
Come on, boy. We good here. Let's just get there. All right. So we know his name was King Edgar the Peaceful, who looks exactly like me. Okay, when I have my judge, y'all all seen the picture. All right. If I turn to the side, you'll see it. But enough about that. Let's go to a lawyer who tells the truth about King Edgar the Peaceful was indeed Jesus. All right, let's get there.
And point of interest, as we're speaking about King Edgar the Peaceful, for those of you who are just now getting the opportunity to hear about him, King Edgar the Peaceful brought literacy back to our people who was in complete darkness. You know, they were battling and fighting amongst each other. But what he brought in when he removed the secular clergy and brought in the monks, or the Benedictine monks, which was the good people, it helped bring balance and order into a world that was once again dealing with chaos, which we're dealing with today. And as King Clifford Jefferson is doing, as King Edgar the Peaceful returned, he's bringing literacy back, i.e. removing that confusion from the people who have been confused for so long. And that's the English people who are here in so-called America, who are thinking they're these terms, Negroes, Black, colors, African Americans, but you are actually truly the descendants of the Kingdom of England, Great Britain, which we call Albion today.
All right, now, Archbishop just articulated that from a mental faculty. He knows this verbatim, okay? Let's see it verbatim on Wikipedia, because you're gonna read the same exact thing that he just said. All right, this is why you got to know what you're talking about. Look at this. English Benedictine Reform. He just talked about that. Read that for him, Archbishop.
The English Benedictine Reform, or the monastic reform of the English Church.
Say that again. What?
Of the English Church.
It didn't say the Church of England. It said the English Church. He was specific. Continue.
Of the English Church in the late 10th century was a religious and intellectual movement in the later Anglo-Saxon period. In the mid-10th century, almost all monasteries were staffed by secular clergy who were often married. The reformers sought to replace them with celibate contemplative monks following the rule of Saint Benedict. The movement was inspired by continental monastic reforms, and the leading figures were Dunstan, Archbishop of Canterbury, Ethelwood, Bishop of Winchester, Oswald, and Archbishop of York. In 7th and 8th century England, most monasteries were Benedictine, but in the 9th century, learning and monasticism declined severely. Alfred the Great deplored the decline and started to reverse it. The court of Athelstan, the first king of the whole of England, was cosmopolitan, and future reformers such as Dunstan and Ethelwood learned from the continental exponents of the Benedictine monasticism. The English movement became dominant under King Edgar, 959-975, who supported the expulsion of secular clergy from monasteries and cathedral chapters and their replacement by monks. The reformers had close relations with the crown, furthering its interest and depending on its support. The movement was confined to southern England and the Midlands, as the crown was not strong enough in northern England to confiscate property from local elites there to establish Benedictine foundations. The movement declined after the deaths of its leading exponents at the end of the 10th century.
Okay, so as we can see, we talk about King Alfred the Great, Ashton, Edgar the Peaceful, all a part of the English church on behalf of the crown, okay? Because whatever king was sitting at that time represented the crown, because the crown is what, Archbishop?
Crown is with the king, one body.
What you call that?
A corporation soul.
See, you got to know this, y'all. You got to know this. You have to know this. Why? Because that's the one who controls the land. Atherton was the one who, a deed is nothing more than what we call a predecessor of library of season, which means delivery of possession, i.e., that property. Let's go to it real quick before we move on.
And pay attention once again. They said this is the intellectual movement, i.e., literacy movement.
Mm-hmm.
And when the land was taken away from us, this was during a time what they called the anti-literacy era, when you weren't able to so-called read and write because you were placed in bondage. And so therefore, you wouldn't have the ability to put your so-called claim or a so-called estate on the record for the record, because it would be considered a form of them losing their ability to control the land.
Mm-hmm. Read that first paragraph.
It's called livery of season. It's an archaic legal conveyancing ceremony formerly practiced in feudal England and in other countries following English common law, used to convey holdings and property. The term livery is closely related to, if not synonymous with, delivery, used in some jurisdictions in contract law or the related law of deeds. The oldest forms of common law provided that a valid conveyance of a feudal tenure in land required physical transfer by the transferor to the transferee in the presence of witnesses of a piece of the ground itself, in the literal sense of a hand-to-hand passing of an amount of soil, a twig, key to a building on that land, or other token.
Okay, so this was done based off what we call intel estates for heirs. All right. If you was not an heir, then you had no estate in land off of inheritance. That's why it moved from intel to fee simple through the common covering practice. All right. How we know that? Let's look at it. Because none of these people over here who has an interest in any property by way of a deed, by way of conveyance, are not the true owners. Because every deed says grantor and grantee. It didn't say the owner was the grantee. It just said grantor and grantee. Well, just because you grant something don't mean you're the owner. And just because you receive something from the grantee, from the grantor, don't mean that is his rightful, it was his right to give it to you. Because you could not sell land that was intel. It was a violation of Quint Impetuous. Was the law passed by who? Edward the First of the Plantagenet crown. He descended down from who? Atherton, the kings of Wessex. How we know it? Let's look at the ceremonial practice of the turf and twig. Read that part right there, Archbishop.
It says, the lucky new commoner goes to his given acre and cuts a turf from the selected site and drops 2 shillings in the hole made. The high steward of the county then twitches him with a twig and sticks the twig in the turf, then hands it to him, saying, this turf and twig I give to thee, as free as Ethelstan gave to me, and I hope as a loving brother thou wilt be. The high steward then takes the money out of the hole, and the new landowner replaces the turf.
Okay, now it says, so whoever received the turf and twig, which is a basic conveyance, or a grantor to a grantee, if you granted something to somebody else, it better be based off how it was under the ceremonial practice under Atherton. We know Atherton was who?
The King of England.
He looked like he was black, but he was of Anglo-Saxon Berber descent. You can see Imre versus Hassan for that. Okay? Imre versus Hassan, case law dealing with citizenship here in North America, where Anglo-Saxon of dark skin complexion could not qualify because the qualification for citizenship under the jure way is due genealogy, ethnicity. The citizenship for here under the de facto way is due color skin. Free white person under the National Act of 1790. Okay, we must understand that. So we see that the library of seizure, which means delivery of possession of an estate and land, was done by a ceremony that was going all the way back to Ashelton, the son of who? Alfred the Great.
Let's prove it.
Let's prove it. Let's go back to English Benedictine reform. We just read it. There he is again. Asherton, same person.
Go up so they can see him. You got to scroll up so they can see him a little bit more, King.
Okay, 1 second. That's it?
Yep.
Okay. The ancient Pentateuch reformed. If you scroll down, now this is King Edgar. This is the charter. This is the charter. King Edgar in the charter of New Minister Winchester. We already talked about that. But it says here, in the 7th and 8th century England, most monasteries were Benedictine, but in the 9th century, learning in monasteries declined severely. Alfred the Great and his son, Asselton, the first king in the whole of England, was a cosmopolitan, and the future reformer, such as Dunstan and Asselwood, learned from continental exponents of the Benedictine monasticism. The English movement became dominant under King Edgar the Peaceful, our Jesus Christ, who supported the expulsion of secular clergy from monastery and the cathedral's chapters, and their replacement by monks. The reformer had close relations with the crown. What is the crown? A corporation soul. All right? So let's get there. Now let's get some concrete proof from a lawyer. All right? Let's get there. This is the name of the book, Rule of Clan. Everybody needs to get this book. What an ancient form of social organization reveals about the future of individual freedoms. The Rule of the Clan. Rule of the Clan confronts an uncomfortable but important reality. By Mark S. Weiner, author of Black Trails. This is Mark Weiner. Read that for him, Archbishop.
Mark S. Weiner teaches constitutional law and legal history at Rutgers School of Law in Newark, New Jersey. He is author of the Black Trials, Citizenship from the Beginnings of Slavery to the End of Caste, which received the Silver Gavel Award of the American Bar Association, and Americans Without Law, The Racial Boundaries of Citizenship, which received the President's Book Award of the Social Science History Association. He lives with his wife in Connecticut.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? He teaches constitutional law, legal history at Rutgers University. And he wrote a book on authors of the Black Trials. The very thing we're going through right now. All right? And look what he says.
From kin to king.
Everybody see that? From kin to king. State development in Anglo-Saxon England. Hold on, I got one more coffee for this one. This is going to be good.
In point of interest, the beautiful part about this chapter, saying from kin to king, our king we was related to, so therefore many brothers and sisters hold this false understanding that anybody can be king, but the king we was already related to by blood. So it was going to be somebody in their family who can be traced back to the original kings, going all the way back to, as we see, back to Alfred the Great. And as what King Clifford Jefferson have already done, he has presented as well as showing the credentials regarding his position as being king, and not only king, but we're related to him as the king and kin. So once again, this is a church that's built off a family. That's why we call each other brothers and sisters, because we truly are related, not just in the abstract or the spiritual nature, but by blood, genealogy. We can all trace most of our bloods back to the same people once you realize who you are as being Anglo-Saxon Berber here in so-called America.
All right, well said, Archbishop. Now, don't take our word for it. Take this scholar, all right? So if he's saying this, then we must be scholars. We must be the people he's talking about or speaking about as a scholar. So he's qualifying what we brought to light, something that was considered folklore or myth, we have now brought to a reality, y'all. We have now this topic is found in case law. We find King Edgar in case law. He's in case law, modern day case law, a case law that was just uh, 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 pronounced in 1995. I got case law, but I'm scared to show you because people are trying to act like they're the third Timothy English Church of England, acting like they're Anglo-Saxon Berbers. You can't be Anglo-Saxon Berber if you're not part of the Anglo-Saxon Berber body of politics.
Exactly.
You're not. I'm sorry. You made your choice. All right. I'm only following. I didn't come to change the law, but to fulfill the law, the prophecy that Nobudrani talked about. He was a prophet. Okay.
Exactly.
I was in that school of thought. So I had to go in that school of thought to fulfill that prophecy. I'm going to show you. Chapter 29 says it. Let's get there. Read this for me, Bishop.
In 973, in Abbey in Bath, a great Anglo-Saxon king lay prostrate before an altar while the Archbishop of Canterbury wept with joy. The king was Edgar I, known as Edgar the Peaceful, and at age 30, he was in the 14th year of an exceedingly successful reign. Under his rule, England revamped its currency, streamlined its central administration, sustained its military authority over a once restive island, and recognized its counties along lines that would remain essentially unchanged until 1974.
Did y'all hear that, y'all? Did y'all hear that? It would remain unchanged since 1974. I was born in 1970. January the 14th, which is the Berber year. Yan and there. It had always been the Berber year, my birthday. And I was born in 1970. All right. The laws of our ancestor, King Edgar, who was our Jesus Christ, laws remain in place since 1974. All right. Going back to the English Military Reformation, when we were forced to adopt Christianity and we had to fix that problem back then.
Exactly.
Now we got to do it again. They keep trying to put us under bondage through Christianity. It says it. It says this was their heaven. British Israelism, who claim to be the descendants of Jacob, right? And we know Jacob is a story that originated from Jacob's scone. And Jacob's scone is a story of that stone being brought over to Ireland, Scotland, all right? And now it's known as what we call Edward Confessor's Chair, St. Edward the Confessor's Chair, in which all the ceremonial coronations that take place in the United Kingdom is the chair that belongs to Edward the Confessor, the grandson, the great-grandson of Alfred the Great. Come on, y'all got to know this. All right, read that paragraph all over again, Archbishop.
It says, in 973, in an abbey in Bath, a great Anglo-Saxon king lay prostrate before an altar while the Archbishop of Canterbury wept with joy. The king was Edgar I, known as Edgar the Peaceful, and at the age of 30, he was in the 14th year of an exceedingly successful reign. Under his rule, England revamped its currency, streamlined its central administration, sustained its military authority over a once restive island, and recognized its counties along lines that will remain essentially unchanged until 1974. The Archbishop was Dunstan, a determined reformer of the English Church and advocate for his monastic interests. Overcome by the king's humility, he sang the hymn Te Deum through his tears. We praise thee, O God. We acknowledge thee to be the Lord. A half-century later, he will be canonized as a saint.
Did you hear that, y'all? He said, we acknowledge, we praise thee, O God. We acknowledge thee to be the Lord. Did you hear this?
He's telling you, King
talk.
Edgar the
Read that
Peaceful
again
was
for
God.
him. They didn't get that. They didn't get that. I didn't say that.
The Archbishop was Dunstan, a determined reformer of the English Church, an advocate for his monastic interests. Be overcome by the king's humility, he sang the hymn Te Deum through his tears. We praise thee, O God. We acknowledge thee to be the Lord. A half-century later, he will be canonized as a saint. The occasion for Edgar's pious self-effacement and Dunstan's joy was the king's coronation. Tellingly, the ceremony was held on Pentecost when Christians celebrate the descent of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. The age of the king, too, was significant. the same in which Jesus began his ministry.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? That's when you get into the missing years of Jesus Christ in Glastonbury, England.
Exactly.
All right? You got to know that story. Joseph of Arimathea. He took Jesus and took him over there to Glastonbury. Then they came up with the story dealing with the holy what you call it, the burial mound and the sceptre, not the sceptre, what you call it, when he was buried.
The resurrection.
Not the resurrection, something with the resurrection, but it's called. It slipped my mind. We'll get into it. Just continue to read.
The ritual began when Edgar, wearing a crown and holding a scepter, was led into the abbey by a parade of white-robed clerics, a crowd of priests, in the words of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a throng of monks and council sage. The ensuing ceremony was filled with all the pageantry of great royal events in England today. The king would be anointed with holy oil from an animal's horn. He would be given a ring, a sword, a crown, a scepter, and a staff as symbols of his rule.
Y'all better be listening, because it's going to tell you that in chapter 29 of the Holy Quran, Circle 7. It's going to say exactly that.
Mm-hmm. And the abbey will resound with the joyous antiphon from the kings Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet. But in constitutional terms, the most important part of the ritual came when Edgar spoke, shortly after clerics raised him from his position of humility before the altar. For it was then that he swore his coronation oath, making a public promise to rule according to certain principles. His words have echoed as loudly across constitutional history as the anthem Zadok the priest echoed in the abbey at the bath that day. In the name of the Holy Trinity, I promise 3 things to the Christian people, my subjects, he declared. First, that God's church and all Christian people of my realm shall enjoy true peace. Second, that I forbid to all ranks of men robbery and all wrongful deeds. Third, that I urge and command justice and mercy in all judgments, so that the gracious and compassionate God who lives and reigns may grant us all everlasting mercy. In modern terms,
hold on, brother Cornish from the Cornish Temple. I'll respond to you in a second. Let my Archbishop continue reading.
In modern terms, the king had pledged to protect the church, to safeguard public order by applying the law to all persons regardless of rank, and to govern according to an abstract Christian ideal of justice. Edgar's pledge.
You hear that? According to an abstract Christian idea of justice. Continue.
Edgar's pledge is the first coronation oath in the Anglo-Saxon historical record. And though it may not have been the earliest ever taken by an English king, it clearly marked Anglo-Saxon government as having come a long way from its roots in a very different way of life. What are the preconditions for modern clan societies to develop the rule of law? What are the fruits of that transformation? The English Middle Ages, the story leading to Edgar's coronation oath and beyond, offers important clues.
Okay, well said, Archbishop. Now to you, brother, whoever your name is from the Cornish Temple. The reason this is your remark. When I was reading the recording of Edgar, they had no reason to be biased. So why was they speaking of him to the lowest? You said you was going to respond. Why speak so bad? I asked in an intelligent tone. Well, brother, if you reveal, if you revealed the lesson that I did in regards to you claiming that King Edgar was such a bad person, and you claimed that I was reincarnating as him to be that same bad person, which you said he was, according to whatever book you was reading. You didn't give the source of what book you were reading. And I can care less, because how could you be a Moorish American but came to be a Cornish a member from the Cornish Temple? How? That don't make no sense to me. You're using Cornish history and Moorish history is not the same. Moorish history and English history is not the same. Moorish history is a term or associated with land. Y'all got that mixed up. More has nothing to do with, according to our understanding, dealing with a person. More has more to do with the land. That's why it's called more land. Because if you don't own land, then where the hell are you? The only place you can be out is on the sea. And Moors were more active on the sea. And if you want to go to the historical origins of the Moors on land, you have to go to Morocco for that. All right? Not here in North America. You here in North America. All right? What claim can you make under or any grounds that you have in regards to disqualifying me to be able to act in the manner of my ancestor? That don't make sense to me. So you continue to do what you do, and we're going to do what we do here. All right? So we will ask you to cease from making any more comments on our channel. Okay? You got your movement. Continue on with your movement. If you're not a member of the Moorish Science of America, then this lesson had nothing to do with you. This lesson is for those who are members of the Moorish Science of America, because you, as you said, are a member of the Cornish Temple. Okay? So peace be upon you. All right, let's move forward. So as we can see, as Mark Miner stated, that Archbishop, you'd like to say something on that?
Oh no, I just once again, pretty much you said what was needed to be said. If he's claiming to be Cornish, then do your movement with the Cornish. But us as English people, we recognize who our king is and our king of peace is, as well as the United States of America. They recognize the English as well as the English history. So therefore, there's no need for us to converse with those who are against this intellectual movement that we have already presented and that we're constantly demonstrating once again for the English people. We're not here for the Cornish people. We're here for the English people.
Exactly. And if why did you choose anything you could have chosen to question me as being a reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful? Why you did that makes no sense to me. You got your right. You got your own opinion, but it's not binding here. All right, it's not binding here. We have proven who we are. I have proven who I am, and I'm going to do it further to those who are Moorish American, because clearly you are not. I was a member of the Moorish Science of America. You stated that in your video. You said this man has left the Moorish Science of America under the teachings of Grand Chief Lord H.L. Bay. All right, you stated that in that lesson. All right, then you said you hope the brother come back to the Moorish Science of America. Why would you say that when you just said here that you're not a Moorish American?
On top of that, we're demonstrating, showing that this is based off of genealogy. Our genealogy is not tying us back to Moors. Our genealogy has tied us back to the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion. And if that's unfortunately something that you don't want to accept, then that's not something that we want to continue to entertain, because we are who we are presented and shown without a shadow of a doubt. And there's no need to be contradicting who we are to pretty much try to meet the merits and the demands of someone who clearly don't want to accept who we are.
Okay, we can do it. We can do even further, brother. Whoever your name is, because we still get to have your name. Please give us your name, and also we invite you to our platform to have an intelligent conversation. And you can bring your presumptuous fact, and we'll bring our lawful facts. Okay, and we're discuss this like men. If that's what you're saying, you're coming in with an intelligent tone. All right. So if that's your intentions, please reach out to my Archbishop Belmont after this class, and we'll set up something, okay? Because the world needs to know. And with that, we're going to digress on that note. All right, so if you're going to continue to watch the lecture, please do, but refrain from asking any more questions in regards to your perception or your disagreement or whatsoever. This is for our students to learn, okay? This is the purpose of this class. So with that, we'll move forward. All right, so as you can see from Mark Weiner, he clearly tells you that there is a clear symbolism, a clear likeness to King Edgar the Peaceful, as well as Jesus, the person they call the Christ. Let's prove it again. Let's go to another source. Let's see, what's this source? Let's go to the Bible. Because you just said, my studies in English forced the Cornish Latin to English, Young, and Bible. Right? English, Young, and Bible, whatever that means. Let's go to the Bible.
No, he's saying my studies is the English forced the Cornish Latin to English tongue and Bible.
And
so So he's saying that the English people forced the English language and the Bible onto the Cornish people. But
first of all, the English didn't write the Bible. Scottish people wrote the Bible. King James was not an Englishman. All right, so we have nothing to do with the Bible. That was the purpose for the English Reformation.
on
Did
top
you
of
listen?
he's not understanding the
You're
fact
not
that we just
understanding that.
explained to you how the English people was infiltrated based off of the Gregorian mission. So anything that was forced on you was not forced based off of the English, but was forced on you based off of those who invaded the English and would utilize the English identity to continue their invasions.
Yes, well said, Archbishop. Well said. So let's go to Isaiah. All right, read what it says here, Archbishop.
You got to share it.
1 second.
And point of interest, this is the reason why King Edgar was doing the Reformation, because they're trying to redo or fix what those who came in with the invasions were doing to the people, which we're constantly doing now by bringing this literacy or bringing the intelligence back to the people who need to know it. So therefore we can resurrect ourselves accordingly and live in peace amongst ourselves once again.
Mm-hmm. Screen problems. We'll let go, Archbishop.
You just got to share the share the
Hold
page.
on, I'm trying to it's my screen is messing up. Hold on. Refresh. I gotta get me another computer. Isaiah 11. Is it share yet?
It's still loading up. Okay. Isaiah 11. The King of Peace is coming. A new branch will grow from a stump of a tree. So a new king will come from the family of Jesse. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon that king. The Spirit will give him wisdom and understanding, guidance and power. The Spirit will teach him to know and respect the Lord. This king will be glad to obey the Lord. He will not judge by the way things look or decide by what he hears, but he will judge the poor honestly. He will be fair in his decisions for the poor people of the land. At his command, evil people will be punished, and by his words, the wicked will be put to death. Goodness and fairness will give him strength, like a belt around his waist. Then wolves will live in peace with lambs, and leopards will lie down to rest with goats. Calves, lions, and young bulls will eat together, and a little child will lead them. Cows and bears will eat together in peace. Their young will lie down and rest together. Lions will eat hay as oxen do. A baby will be able to play near a cobra's hole, and a child will be able to put his hand into the nest of a poisonous snake.
Hold on 1 minute, Archbishop. My screen acting up again. And what is the computer is old, and the storage you can't put on it because of this model. So I'm just have to order a whole new computer. Sorry for the disruptions, my brothers and sisters.
All right, it says, then wolves will live in peace with lambs, and leopards will lie down to rest with goats. Calves, lions, and young bulls will eat together, and a little child will lead them. Cows and bears will eat together in peace. Their young will lie down to rest together. Lions will eat hay as oxen do. A baby will be able to play near a cobra's hole. A child will be able to put his hand into the nest of a poisonous snake. They will not hurt or destroy each other on all my holy mountain, because the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the sea is full of water. At that time, the new king from the family of Jesse will stand as a banner for all peoples. The nations will come together around him, and the place where he lives will be filled with glory. At that time, the Lord will again reach out and take his people who are left alive in Assyria, North Egypt, South Egypt, Cush, Elam, Babylonia, Hamath, and all the islands of the sea. God will raise a banner as a sign for all nations, and he will gather the people of Israel who are forced from their country. He will gather the scattered people of Judah from all parts of
The
the earth.
lion, y'all, y'all better be listening. This is
At
the
that,
Lion of Judah.
sure is. At that time, Israel will not be jealous anymore, and Judah will have no more enemies. Israel will be jealous of Judah, and Judah will not hate Israel. But Israel and Judah will attack the Philistines on the west. Together, they will take the riches from the people of the east.
See, my computer keep acting up because they don't want me to reveal this. Hold on, we ain't gonna get. Oh, there we go.
They will conquer Edom and Moab, and the people of Ammon will.
Come on, you see that? You see that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, my people. It's gonna come out. We're gonna get this to you. Like this overload. Give me right. 14. Is it showing, Archbishop?
Yep.
We have 14.
Okay. But Israel and Judah will attack the Philistines on the west. Together, they will take the riches from the people of the east. They will conquer Edom and Moab, and the people of Ammon will be under their control. The Lord will dry up the Red Sea of Egypt. He will wave his arm over the Euphrates River and dry it up with a scorching wind. He will divide it into 7 small rivers so that people can walk across them with their sandals on. So God's people who are left alive will have a way to leave Assyria, just like the time the Israelites came out of Egypt.
Okay, that's happening right now. That's happening right now. You look over the countries on Europe, floods. One second. Floods, earthquakes, everything's going on.
And where all the people coming at? They're coming over here.
Coming over here. All right. Let me come here. I don't know what's wrong with my computer. It's getting on my nerves. Okay. It's going to come to the closing. I'm sitting here watching the Jeffersons. Moving on up. We're moving up, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is the Holy Command, Circle 7. On master and servant. You have to learn how to be a servant, but you can't be a master and servant. You can't be a master until you learn how to serve.
Exactly.
You can't be a master until you learn how to serve it. And that's understanding magistrate and subject. Okay? Very important for you to understand that. Because out of all the chapters in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, or in the Moorish Guide, the most paramount of all the literature that Noble Ali ever gave or ever produced was master and servant and magistrate and subject. So let's go through that real quick before we close out. Archbishop.
All right. Holy instructions from the prophet, master and servant, chapter 28. Repine not, O man, at the state of servitude. It is the appointment of Allah and hath many advantages. It removeth thee from cares and solicitudes in life. 2. The honor of a servant is his fidelity. His highest virtues are submission and obedience. 3. Be patient, therefore, under the reproofs of thy master, and when he rebuketh thee, answer not again. The silence of thy resignation shall not be forgotten. 4. Be studious of his interests, be diligent in his affairs, and faithful to the trust which he proposeth in thee. 5. Thine time and thy labor belong unto him. Defraud him not thereof, for he payeth thee for them. 6. And thou who art the master, be just to thy servant if thou expecteth from him fidelity, and reasonable in thy commands if thou expecteth ready obedience. 7. The spirit of a man is in him. Severity and rigor may create fear, but can never command love. 8. Mix kindness with reproof and reason with authority. So shall thy admonitions take place in his heart, and his duty shall become his pleasure. 9. He shall serve thee faithfully from the motive of gratitude. He shall obey thee cheerfully from the principle of love, and fail thou not in return to give his diligence and fidelity their proper reward.
Okay. So master and servant is important because that's the social contract. That is the social compact to keep the social order. All right. You got to learn to serve the law. The law is the master. All right. You're the servant of the law. The law cannot come to fruition without acting upon it. And that is the script that everybody has to play. All right. You either follow the script or you break script. Okay. All right. And what you're reading around is the master and servant, which are those, and the master must be the ones who created the law. All right. They're the master. The servant is the one who don't follow the master, but follows the laws that the master put in place. Okay. But if the laws are unagreeable, then you have the right to address that with the master. All right. Mm-hmm. That's called social order. If you don't have that right to address that in regards to the laws that maintain the social order, then that's tyranny. All right. That's slavery. All right. So that means that, and you have a hard time checking slavery by the master when you had a whole bunch of masters. Right? You got to aggregate. You got 100 people trying to be masters versus one master. It's easy to point the blame at one person than 100 people. All right? We must understand this concept. You got a whole bunch of grand sheiks, assistant grand sheiks. All right? And you're at the mercy of the assistant grand sheik and the grand sheiks and whatever other title that's out there. All right? But who is the true master? Because it said you all were appointed by Allah. Every appointment is by way of Allah. Okay? To us is God, the creator, which is the omnipresent, the one who we can't see. But that manifestation of that divine law must become, which is abstract, must become physical, i.e. concrete. All right? That's why Jesus said, I didn't come to change the law, but to fulfill the law. When I manifest in my physical form by personifying and incarnating into the law. Okay? That's important that you must understand. Some physical manifestation must take place for that master to give laws governing society, whether it's to the subject or the magistrate, which is the next chapter that we're going to reveal. Very important. Read this from Mark Bishop.
In chapter 29, magistrate and subject. 1. O thou, the favorite of heaven, whom the sons of men, thy equals have agreed to raise to sovereign power and set as a ruler over themselves, consider the ends and importance of their trust, facts more than the dignity and height of thine station.
Stop. So it says, O thou, the favorite of heaven, whom the sons of men. So it ain't talking about all men. They're talking about one man out of all those sons. That's talking about primogeniture. That's talking about a birthright, right? Agnetic successor, an heir. And that heir was the favorite of heaven. All right? He was the favorite of heaven. So if he's the favorite of heaven, then Allah chose him.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Allah chose him. All right. So Allah chose the favorite of heaven, who the sons of men will agree that Allah chose that one, the favorite of heaven. All right. And we chose him because we saw that, well, out of all of us, we equal to one, but we got to choose one. We can't choose all of us. Somebody had to be chosen. And nobody prophesied about that person being chosen. No one has chosen that person because he had to be chosen himself. Jesus said he didn't know it was his time yet. He had to come to a state of overstanding. All right. That's why I left the temple. I went on my ministry. All right. To find out who I was, contrast to what I believed I was, contrast to what I was being learned in the Moorish Science Temple of America. Because this was prophesied by Noble Ali, and the only person that leads in the Moorish Science Temple of America are Grand Sheiks. All right. These are Grand Sheiks, and Grand Sheiks comes a dime a dozen. What is that one individual that supersedes all the Grand Sheiks? You don't have that individual. You're missing that key person. It just said it. O thou the favorites of heaven, whom the sons of men, thy equals, have agreed. So all y'all equal, but one has to stand amongst the rest. Have agreed to raise them to sovereign power. What is sovereignty? Sovereignty is a complete sovereign power and of authority of a state, and it tells the hierarchy of a state that has the complete authority to create laws, amend the laws for the people. And there's two forms of sovereignty: de facto and de jure. De facto, which means one has the legal right to do so, and de facto, parts of de jure means the one who has the legal right to do so, and de facto means one who has the factual ability to do so. Factual is a presumption at law until proven otherwise. We know it's not a fact because it's through acquisition of sovereignty by way of prescription, which means somebody acting as the sovereign, and we know somebody acting as the sovereign because you got a bunch of them. You got the executive, legislative, judicial branch. All these branches, which makes up the cabinet, i.e., what we call the collective college, which we call parliament, are the sovereigns. All right, that's incorporated. Only comes in two forms: corporation sole and corporation aggregate. Mm-hmm. And this is not talking about the corporation aggregate. So that means that all you Grand Sheiks are out of order because you're not the sovereign that the favorites of heaven, which is Allah, chose amongst the sons of men who were their equal. Do that make sense, Archbishop?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
2. Thou art clothed in purple, and seated on a throne. The crown of majesty investeth thy temples. The scepter of power is placed in thy hand, but not for thyself were these ensigns given, not meant for thine own, but the good of thy kingdom.
Hold on. What is this talk we hearing here? Where does talk come from? You know what I'm saying? Not for thy ensigns given, but for the good of thy kingdom. Placed on the throne, the crown of majesty is invested in thy temples. So if your temples don't have a crown of majesty, the crown is the crown, which is the corporation soul, who sits on the throne, all right, clothed in purple, the same thing we read in this book right here.
Mm-hmm. And ensigns mean heraldry.
Where is it at?
Heraldry or flag.
Right here. King will be anointed with holy oil, animal will be given a ring, sword, crown, a scepter, a staff, a symbol of his rule. Well, let me see this.
Yep. It says the ritual began with Edgar wearing a crown and holding a scepter, was led into the abbey by a parade of white-robed clerics, a crowd of priests, in the words of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a throng of monks and council sage. The ensuing ceremony was filled with all the pageantry of great royal events in England today. The king will be anointed with holy oil from an animal's horn. He would be given a ring, a sword, a crown, a scepter, and a staff as symbols of his rule.
Continue with this last part.
And the abbey will resound with a joyous antiphon from 1 King Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet.
Okay, so that means he was a priest of Melchizedek. He was a priest of Melchizedek, Malachi Zodok. Okay, the king of righteousness. Yes, brother, from the Cornish temple. You stay, so when the prophet passed, another had to, not another prophet, because the prophet prophesied about who was to come. And who was to come is going to be mentioned in part 3 of Magistrate and Subject, which you're about to read now. So let's read it. All right. Now read all 1, 2, 3 again. We just read 1 and 2. We have to go to 3, but read 1, 2, and 3 so they can read it in its entirety.
Magistrate and subject. 1, that the favorite of heaven, whom the sons of men, thy equals, have agreed to raise to sovereign power and set as a ruler over themselves, consider the ends and importance of their trust, facts more than the dignity and height of thy station. 2, thou art clothed in purple and seated on a throne. The crown of majesty investeth thy temples. The scepter of power is placed in thy hand, but not for thyself or these ensigns given, not meant for thine own, but the good of thine kingdom. 3, the glory of a king is the welfare of his people. His power and dominion rest on the hearts of his subjects.
Stop. So he clarified it. He said, the glory of the king was the favorite of heaven, who thy sons raised as their equals. All right? You chose one. You didn't choose it. Allah chose it. All right? Because if according to the law, then if one was chosen, you would have had a king already. Why don't y'all talking about the king? The glory of the king is the welfare of his people. That's the sovereign. That's the one you should agree to raise the sovereign, but you don't want to do that. Why? Because y'all all want to have that power. And the power is not your prerogative. It's not your priority. It's not your jewel regalia. That belongs to the king. And that's through primogeniture, birthright. Moorish Americans, the origin of Moors, as you identify, derived from Islam. We say Islam means peace because that means God's peace. All right? No different. But it had to associate with a nation accustomed, and we're reading the customs of English kings because there has not been one English Moorish king that we know of today that you can cite. Not one. Here, on this, I ain't talking about over there in Morocco or on that continent. I'm talking about right here, where you at, that has passed laws to protect you, where you at. Apparently, Noble Ali knew what he was talking about because there's laws here to protect you as the king. He said, don't throw away your surnames. That's your birthright. Continue to read, Archbishop.
4, the mind of a great prince is exalted with the grandeur of his situation. He evolveth high things and searcheth for business worthy of his power. 5, he calleth together the wise men of his kingdom. He consulteth the abilities, he consoleth among them with freedom and heareth the opinions of them all. 6, he looketh among his people with discernment. He discovereth the abilities of men and employeth them according to their merits.
Stop. This is king and parliament. That's called a feudal government. That's the crown or corporation soul. All right, that's what we're talking about. Nobody's talking about the laws of parliament. Clothed in purple. Purple is the color of royalty. All right, royalty. You don't see England dressing with feathers and the fez on and stuff like that. You don't see that.
Exactly.
You don't see that. You see Noble Ali was dressed in a turban. All right, he had a feather in his hat. Why? Because he was a Berber. He didn't come around and say it because he said I had to give you. He said I had to go around. What he said? How he said I had to go around my elbow get how there was a saying that he had said. I don't want to quote the wrong phrase.
But he said if he gave you all too much, you will fall back to sleep.
Yes, he said if I gave you everything, you would have been back to sleep. 1 second. But when you say, but one, Brother Cornish Temple said, but once you get the divine instructions, each man must be a priest amongst themselves with the instructions to be a good servant or their own on their own. And if they don't, the reward for bad deeds from Allah. How can you exist alone outside of the people? That means that you exist privately within the public. It don't work that way. You're either in the public or you're in the private. All right? When you do things in privacy, that means that the public don't supposed to know about it. All right? Everything we doing is not private. It's public for those who are members of the society. It ain't for those who are not members of society. So when you're saying that when you're reading divine instructions, everything in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, is instructions for you. All right? But those instructions can be from a private perspective as well as for a public perspective. That's why when you read chapter 28, it deals with your public affairs, master and servant. All right? Whether a public affair or private, it can be public or private, master and servant. But when you're dealing with magistrate and subject, that's public. All right? That's public. That's dealing with public affairs. That's dealing with the social order. That's dealing with what we call the public utility. Any comments, Archbishop?
And what you, in point of venture, like you said, what you do in private is one thing. We don't have no control of what you believe in the private. But when you come out here in the public, you better make sure that it's according to everything that everybody else have to accept and agree with to keep the civil order.
Well said. Well, remember, because there's a separation of church and state, right? If there's and us in our society or body politic, there is no separation of church and state. All right? So things we can do, you can't do as a religious society because you don't have a body of politics. You have a religious belief that's free to anybody to believe in.
Exactly.
But when it comes to some type of protection at law pertaining to that religious society, you have no protection because they only protect your faith and belief, not the laws.
Not exactly.
The laws, if there was any law that must protect, it must be incorporated in the state. 61-28, right saying in the charge of Great Britain, safe for repeal, an act to incorporate trustees of religious society for property held by corporations in place thereof. That's a statute for a religious society to incorporate the trustees of that religious society for property held in corporations, i.e. the state. All right? Because the state is not a religious society. A state is a corporation, and it's not sovereign. Because if it's sovereign, then that means that sovereign must be that it must be de jure. It ain't de jure because under de jure, you must have a monarch. De facto, you don't have a monarch. You just have a republic, which you call a commonwealth. In the Scottish king, they call it commonwealth. All right? So they took the sovereign and just acted off the parliamentary laws. And that's what the colonies had a problem with. They were doing things under the parliament, and the king had no say-so because they were not de jure kings.
Exactly.
Y'all better understand what I'm saying to y'all.
This was that jealousy that even Prophet Noble Drew Ali had to deal with. Remember, he even said that they said it was, yeah, he said they were jealous of his nobility. And so we're showing once again that based off of who we are, genealogically wise or ancestry wise, people are going to be jealous of the powers and rights that we have to do what we're doing, you know, and we're supposed to be doing it. It's our duty. We had to incarnate this lifetime to save our people, and the people we have to save is the English.
Well said. We see it now. Brother Truth. All right? He's talking about Anglo-Saxon Berbers. The first time that ever came up was with us. No one ever spoke about Anglo-Saxon Berbers until we made the claim. We incorporated in law as the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. No one else has done that. No one. That's where you're going to be in trouble. All right? But the Cornish from the Cornish Temple, if you are the Cornish Temple, if it's a religious society and you're backed by a body of politics, then you must have some legal, some type of law that promulgates what it is that you say is your legal status. That the laws contrary to your nation must protect. All right? They already told you that if you here, then you're under the same status as a migrant. We see that happen right now in all the states where migrants got more rights than the citizen.
People were supposed to be called be there. Yep.
Yeah, they got more public benefits than those who call themselves the Republic. Come on, man. Let's close out with this. Continue to read, Archbishop.
All right. 7. His magistrates are just, his ministers are wise, and the favorite of his bosom deceiveth him not.
Stop. Okay. So the favorite of heaven must be the king, because the chapter is called Magistrate and Subject. And it says that his magistrates are just, his ministers are wise. So that means the magistrate and the ministers are subject to that favorite of heaven, which must be that king. And Noble Ali wasn't that king. He was the prophet who prophesied about what's going to happen when that king come back in regards to those officers who are servants and subjects of that king, known as magistrate and ministers. Because under King Edgar, secular clergy and civil secular and secretary, I forgot that word, must sit together. All right, they study together. Let's move forward. Go ahead, Archbishop.
8. He smiled on the arts and they flourish. The science improved beneath the culture of his hand. 9. With the learned and the ingenious, he delighteth himself. He kindleth in their breast emotion, and the glory of his kingdom is exalted by their labors. 10. The spirit of the merchant who extendeth his commerce, the skill of the farmer who enricheth his lands, the ingenuity of the artist, the improvements of the scholar, all these he honoreth with his favor, or rewardeth with his bounty. 11. He planteth new colonies, he buildeth strong ships, he openeth rivers for convenience, he formeth harbors for safety, his people abound in riches, and the strength of his kingdom increaseth. 12. He frameth his statutes with equity and wisdom. His subjects enjoy the fruits of their labor in security, and their happiness consists of the observance of the law. 13. He foundeth his judgments on the principle of mercy, but in the punishment of offenders. He is strict of impartial. 14. His ears are open to the complaints of his subjects. He restraineth the hands of their oppressors, and he delivereth them from their tyranny. 15. His people, therefore, look up to him as a father, with reverence and love. They consider him as the guardian of all they enjoy. 16. Their affection unto him begetteth in his breast a love of the public. The security of their happiness is the object of his care. 17. No murmurs against him arise in their hearts. The machinations of his enemies endanger not the state. 18. His subjects are faithful and firm in his cause. They stand in his defense as a wall of brass. The army of a tyrant flieth before them, as chaff before the wind. 19. Security and peace bless the dwelling of his people, and glory and strength encircle his throne forever.
Okay, well said. So with that in mind, everyone must see that according to that was instructed by the prophet Timothy Jew, also called the Noble One, Noble Jew Ali, we must adhere and circumscribe to that of understanding our purpose and intent for being here, to understand our ability to be a servant to the master. All right. We know the master is those that our ancestors have put in charge over our future. All right. And this has been preserved in law, right? Protected by the law, upheld by the law, as required in chapter 29. Because we said that the magistrate and ministers, when you say magistrate and ministers, under the United States laws, there's a separation of church and state. So magistrate and ministers would not be construed to be together. All right. But when you say magistrate and ministers, as told in the Holy Quran, Circle 7, chapter 27, chapter 29, you see that that's talking about a fusion of government. And the fusion of government, as we know it under English history, is no more than a corporation soul by way of one natural person. All right. One natural person, not a bunch of people. One. There's only one king here. All right. One king, officers, Archbishop Belmont. He's also head of the members of the Bar Association. This brother works for the courts, so he knows what he's doing. He's head clerk for the county judge, Superior Court judge. All right, he's just sharpening his scale. That's all he's doing. But he knows where the truth at and where the power is at. All right, so you must understand that in order to fulfill what Noble Drew Ali prophesied for his descendants who are of English descent. So with that, we close out, as we always do, under the principles of, as you call Islam. We call it peace. And with that, Archbishop, you got the last say.
Well, there you have it, brothers and sisters. With those of you within the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion, the goal and our obligation is to bring clarity to those of you who are still suffering from the darkness, which we like to call ignorance. And I'm not saying ignorance in a negative fashion, but I'm saying that as what it means, and it means those who just don't know. We don't want you to take this as something to attack you, but to bring uniformity, because if you don't know what we have been brought to do based off of who we are, not only, like I said, agnatic succession for the king, but genealogy wise, who you are. Once you do your research regarding who you are, going back to the time with our ancestors, them were not only living in peace, but when they were actually doing things amongst each other in those times when we were warring against those factions that were pretty much trying to invade and take on our inheritance, which we see today we have lost because of we started feuding amongst each other. And once again, only way for us to correct these wrongs is we must start reading what was left in stone, or in this case, in the doctrines that we call history and law, for us to be able to pull ourselves back together again. And it must be done first through the church. And the reason why it must be done through the church first is because the church was the original body politic, not only for the king, for the people, but also too for our government. And that's where it keeps the people together in unison for us to know how we're going to conduct ourselves amongst each other. The time right now we're dealing with is everything is it's bizarre. We live in an upside down world where you don't know if you're coming or going. The weather is being confusing you, and according to the so-called scriptures, that's when they were telling you, you will know the signs of the end times is based off of you want to know the difference between the seasons. You have more people who are becoming lovers of themselves. They only care about themselves more than each other. You see there's a high rampant or high alarm rate of single parent households, which we call bastard children being born. These things were not something that was unfavorable in the eyes of our ancestors, going back to the times, like I said, when we lived amongst peace with each other. So as we see, we do live in very serious times. And when we lived in the serious times, that's when the one was sent in a divine time to help bring the people back together. So therefore, we don't actually become, in this case, destroyed. And as you see, the English people is who you are because you not only have the language, you have the ancestry, you have the laws, you have all of the credentials to be those people. But instead of you wanting to be those people, you choose to be something completely else, was going to continue to keep you in the state of suffrage that you're dealing with today. And like we said, we come for our own first. And the thing is, even the ones who are seeming to want to negate from what it is that we're doing, you have the same blood in you as we do. And so when we're speaking about as Moors, I like to go to the etymology of the term. And the etymology, everybody, especially Moors, seem to use. We know the etymology means the origin of words and the change of its definitions over time. And the term Moor, it says Berber, North African Berber. And we're telling you we're Anglo-Saxon Berber. So we're showing you we still are family. We are still kith and kin. But at the end of the day, as us being Anglo-Saxon Berbers, we need a king. And even within and under that, like I said, you still have the rights and protections to be what you believe. You know, we're not coming to change your belief system, but the thing is, we coming to bring the truth to you to let you know that your belief system only exists underneath the king who allowed you to be able to exist underneath that. And as you've been here in North America, we know North America lies or laws comes from English. So therefore, like say, your protection and things came from underneath those who were utilizing the rights and prerogatives of the English king. And now that the English king is back, the English king is trying to not only save the people, but he's trying to save the people just by saving the land. If there's no land for the people, there is no people. And so as he's been our representative today, as King Edgar the Peaceful, I'd rather be underneath a king whose lineage can be traced back to the times of the kings who actually lived and existed in peace during the time when we're living amongst people who rather keep us in bondage, who have more tyranny underneath their belt than anything. And instead of trying to bring these truths to you, they rather keep you walking around in circles like chickens with your head cut off. At the end of the day, like I said, you can believe what these historians are saying, but if these historians aren't telling you who you truly are, nationality wise, genealogy wise, then they have the same agenda as those who put you in the darkness. And that darkness was brought to you through your education system or the lack thereof. And so, with that being said, we must come into the marvelous light. This is an intellectual movement, and this intellectual movement is not only going to free you, but it's going to free the world. And I digress.
Well, I said, Archbishop, and like we said, we invite all those who are open for discussions on topics such as these. We're open to all platforms. Like I said, we come to bring the truth as applying to law. All right. Law is the essence of all things. Law is the essence of all things. When we leave you like we left you, we're going to leave you like we greeted you in the beginning of this lecture. And as always, in peace. With that, we say peace.
Peace.
Right.